He wins an auction for a spaceship. But he doesn't expect to win the heart of alien hiding inside. What if everything you thought you knew about love, everything you believed was real, was only a fraction of what the universe has to offer? What if the love of your life isn't human, but someone, or something, you've never imagined? Imagine this for a moment. A quiet night, a calm sky full of stars. You think you're alone, until a strange pulse of light breaks the silence. It's a signal. An unexpected, unexplainable message. And as you decipher it, you realize this is no ordinary transmission. It's a call from another world. But here's the real question: what do you do when you discover that the one you're meant to love isn't from Earth? Not just from another place, but another galaxy entirely? Are you ready to open your heart? Because this isn't just a love story. This is the beginning of a bond that could change the course of everything. I didn't choose to hear that message. I didn't ask for it. But once I did, I couldn't turn away. Could you? So, how far would you go for love? To the ends of the earth? Or beyond the stars themselves? Because the love of a lifetime isn't always human. Sometimes, it's alien. And that's where our story begins. The silence of space felt endless. Caden's ship, the Eclipse, drifted through the vastness, its engine hummed the only sound breaking the quiet. He leaned back in his seat, staring out at the endless dark. His mission was simple: deliver a message, then get out. No complications. No risks. But that was before the signal came in. It was faint at first, just a glitch in the system. He considered ignoring it, but the ping persisted, growing louder, almost pleading. He sat up straighter, fingers dancing over the console. His eyes narrowed. There was something off about the signal. It was not a distress call. It was more like a cry for help. His thumb hovered over the accept button, hesitation in his movements. What if this was a trap? Then, just as he prepared to move on, the ship jolted. An explosion rocked the exterior, the force rattling through his bones. Caden's hand shot out to stabilize himself. His eyes darted to the monitor, where a ship damaged, barely holding together, was drifting into his path. He swore under his breath. Another problem. As if he needed more trouble. Guess I'm not getting out that easy, he muttered. He gritted his teeth and adjusted the ship's trajectory. The damaged craft loomed larger in his view. It was unlike anything he'd seen before: sleek, alien. Definitely not a human-made ship. It had markings. Symbols he couldn't read. All right, Caden exhaled, let's see what the hell this is about. He moved closer, carefully docking alongside the mysterious ship. The quiet hum of his own vessel seemed too loud now, vibrating against his skin. He noticed something strange: a figure, moving behind the cracked windows. Then, the comms flickered to life. A voice, smooth yet commanding, crackled through the static. Who are you? Caden froze. That wasn't a distress call. No panic. Just a demand. Cold. Calculated. His mind raced. That wasn't human. What the hell was this? He swallowed hard, instinctively reaching for the control panel. He steadied his voice, knowing this could go south in seconds. I'm just a traveler. No harm intended. There was a long pause. A beat. And then, the voice responded, cutting through the tension. You're not supposed to be here. Her words echoed in his mind. He couldn't see her, but he felt the weight of her gaze. It was like she was looking directly at him, piercing. Her voice had a power, a commanding force behind it. He wasn't sure if it was from the words or something else. Without warning, the door to the airlock opened, and a tall figure emerged from the shadows. She was unlike anyone he had ever seen. A woman. No, not a woman, something more. Alien. Her skin was a soft shade of emerald green, her eyes glowing violet in the dim light. Her hair, long and white, framed a face so striking it felt otherworldly. And then, the blade. A plasma knife, gleaming, humming with unstable energy. The light flickered across her face as she pressed it against Caden's throat. He froze, his breath catching in his chest. His pulse hammered in his ears. Her eyes locked with his, unblinking, unflinching. She wasn't human. No, this wasn't even close. The knife was shaking in her grip. Barely controlled, the energy flickering on its edge like a force that could tear through his skin with the slightest movement. His mind raced. He knew better than to provoke her. "Who the hell are you?" Her voice was smooth, but laced with a warning, a threat buried deep beneath the calm exterior. "Caden," he managed to say, voice steady despite the tension. His hands instinctively rose, palms facing her. "I'm the owner of this ship. I mean no harm." The woman's eyes flicked to the ship's ID on the console. Then, to him. "Owner." She repeated the word, skeptical. He reached for the wristband on his arm, tapping a button to display the auction receipt. The holographic text flickered in the dim light. "Purchase confirmed. Final bid, 400 credits. Owner, Caden Reyes." Her eyes scanned the text, narrowing. She didn't lower the blade. "Unbelievable," she muttered, shaking her head. "They actually sold it?" Caden exhaled in relief, still not daring to move. His chest felt tight. The tension between them was palpable. Unreal. Everything about this felt wrong, but he was still alive. For now. "All right," she sighed, letting the blade fall to the floor with a soft thud. "I'm Zyra." Her tone shifted, the edge of hostility fading into something else, something curious, though still guarded. "Welcome to your new ship. I hope you like it." Caden's heart was still pounding in his chest. But now, he needed answers. And his instinct told him there was far more to this than just an alien encounter. "What is this ship?" he asked carefully. Zyra's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile, but almost. "It's a VKA-class raider. Military grade. Stealth technology. Armed to the teeth." She paused, letting the information sink in. "And you're the lucky owner now," she finished with a smirk. "Whether you want it or not." Caden's fingers brushed the smooth console in front of him, still not fully registering what had just happened. His mind was racing, trying to process the reality of the situation. He had just bought a military-grade warship, a ship that was apparently worth something more than just the 400 credits he had spent. And now, he was stuck with Zyra, an alien who had no problem putting a knife to his throat. She turned back to the ship's controls, a soft hum filling the air as she activated the navigation systems. Her movements were fluid, almost mechanical. Caden couldn't help but watch her. There was something about the way she moved, the confidence, the strength, the way she commanded the space around her. She was a force. "Where are we headed?" he asked, his voice steady, despite the lingering adrenaline coursing through him. His mind still hadn't caught up with the situation. A part of him wanted to walk away, just turn the ship around and get the hell out of there. But he knew, deep down, that wouldn't solve anything. Zyra didn't look at him. She was focused on the screen in front of her, eyes narrowed as she typed in a series of commands. Her gaze flickered to him for just a moment, and the look she gave him was almost unreadable. But then her lips parted. "We're going to the outer rim, far from here. Away from prying eyes." She didn't explain further. There was no need. He could tell she wasn't looking for conversation. She was in control here. Caden leaned back in his seat, watching her, trying to make sense of everything. The whole situation was absurd. He had gone from being a simple delivery man to the owner of a stolen warship with a mysterious alien living aboard it. And now, he was heading into uncharted space with someone who seemed to know far too much about the ship, the technology, and possibly, him. "You know," he began, his voice breaking the silence, "this is not exactly what I had in mind when I bought this ship. I was thinking more, used freighter, not an armed combat vessel." Zyra's lips twitched slightly, just enough to show she had heard him. She didn't respond, but her eyes softened, if only for a second. It was a fleeting moment, one he wasn't sure he had imagined. The ship lurched slightly as they entered a new sector of space. The stars outside began to blur, their bright points stretched into streaks of light. They were going faster now, the ship's engines roaring to life. "You have no idea what you've gotten yourself into," Zyra said, her voice low but steady. She glanced at him, her violet eyes intense. "Do you?" Caden frowned. "What do you mean?" Her hand tapped the console again, bringing up a holographic display. A series of names flashed across the screen. Bounties. Big ones. "This ship, this is more than just a warship," she continued, her tone even. "It's a target. There's a reason I've been living on it. And a reason I've kept it hidden for so long." "A target?" Caden repeated, his voice rising slightly. "What the hell are you talking about?" Zyra's eyes locked onto his with a cold intensity. "You didn't just buy a ship. You bought the most dangerous ship in the galaxy, and now, you're on the run." Caden's stomach dropped. He could feel his pulse quickening. "Bounties?" He glanced back at the screen, his eyes widening as the names began to sink in. Some of them were pirates, others, military officials with bounties on their heads. He felt trapped, suffocated by the gravity of it all. How had he gotten himself into this mess? The hologram flickered. A new name appeared. "The Black Star Legion," Zyra muttered under her breath. "The people who used to own this ship." Her fingers hovered over the display. "They're mercenaries, ex-military. They were hunting something. Something dangerous." "What?" Caden's voice was sharp. "What were they hunting?" Zyra's lips pressed together, her expression hardening. She hesitated, as if weighing whether or not to reveal more. "They were hunting a weapon," she said finally. "And that weapon is still here, inside this ship." Caden felt the air grow heavier, the weight of the revelation pressing down on him. A weapon? This wasn't just about surviving. This was about something bigger, something that could change the balance of power in the galaxy. "And you think I'm just supposed to sit here and let you lead me into all of this?" Caden asked, his voice tinged with disbelief. Zyra turned to him, her gaze unwavering. "You don't have a choice now. We're already in this together." Caden opened his mouth to respond, but before he could speak, an alert blared across the console. "Incoming transmission." Zyra's eyes narrowed. She tapped a few keys, bringing up the encrypted message. The screen flickered to life, showing the face of a man in a dark cloak. "You've made a mistake, Zyra," the voice rasped, "and now, it's time to pay for it." The transmission cut off as quickly as it had appeared. Caden's heart raced. Zyra's eyes were cold, calculating. She wasn't afraid. But Caden felt the weight of the situation. He wasn't just in over his head anymore. Now, he was truly trapped. "You'll learn soon enough," Zyra said quietly, turning back to the controls. "The Galaxy doesn't play fair." The air in the cockpit grew thick with tension as the transmission ended. Caden's mind raced, trying to process everything. The Black Star Legion. A weapon. And now, someone was hunting them. Zyra's calm demeanor was starting to feel like a mask underneath. There was something darker, more dangerous. She was hiding something. And Caden knew he wasn't going to like what came next. Caden glanced at her, his hands still gripping the armrests. "What's the deal with this weapon? What is it?" His voice was low, urgent. He had to know. He couldn't afford to go into this blind. Zyra didn't answer immediately. She kept her focus on the ship's controls, tapping keys with precision. The hum of the engines was the only sound filling the space between them. Her lips tightened, but she didn't look at him. "It's not just a weapon," she said finally, her tone colder than before. "It's the weapon. The one that could change everything. Everything we know about the galaxy." Her words sent a chill down his spine. "The weapon? What did that even mean?" Caden leaned forward, his gaze fixed on her. "And you've been hiding this?" he asked, his frustration seeping through. Zyra turned to him, her eyes locking with his. For the first time, he saw something behind the cool exterior. Guilt, maybe. Or was it fear? "I had no choice," she replied, voice tight. "I was part of the crew that stole it. But once we realized what it was, we couldn't let it fall into the wrong hands." She paused, the words hanging heavy in the air. "I've been hiding from everyone. From them. From you. From myself." Caden blinked, trying to process her confession. She had been hiding. Hiding from what? The weapon? Or something else entirely? He stepped closer, his voice softening. "Zyra," his eyes searched hers for answers. "You said we. Who else is involved in this? Who else knows about this weapon?" Her gaze flickered to the floor. She didn't want to answer. But she had to. The Black Star Legion, they were ex-military. Mercenaries, hunters. They wanted to sell the weapon to the highest bidder, but things went wrong. Zyra shook her head, frustration evident in her movements. "We took it, but we didn't know what it really was. Now it's too late." Caden's mind raced again. What the hell was this weapon? Before he could ask again, the ship's sensors pinged. A red alert flashed across the console. Zyra immediately sprang into action, her hands flying over the controls. "They found us." Caden's stomach dropped. "Who?" "The Zaran Guild," she said, her voice steady but edged with a quiet fury. "Bounty hunters. Mercenaries. Professionals." She looked at him then, her eyes narrowing. "They'll stop at nothing to get this ship and what's on it." The ship shuddered as it engaged the thrusters, veering sharply to the side. The Zaran Guild had found them. This wasn't just a chase anymore. This was a battle. The engines roared louder, and the ship plunged into the blackness of space at full speed. Caden gripped the armrests, his heart hammering in his chest. "Hold on tight," Zyra said, her voice low and commanding. "We're not going down without a fight." Caden's pulse quickened. His mind was a whirlpool of thoughts. They were being hunted. And not just for the ship. For the weapon. Caden glanced at her, the weight of the situation finally sinking in. "What happens if we don't fight back?" His voice was barely above a whisper. But the words hung between them like a thick fog. "Then they'll take everything." Her eyes locked onto his, no hesitation. "Everything we've worked for, everything we've sacrificed. The galaxy, it's not a place for the weak." She was right. But this felt different. The stakes weren't just about survival anymore. They were about control. Power. The weapon. "And you?" Caden asked, his voice suddenly steady. "What do you want?" Zyra's lips curled into a small, wry smile. "I want to keep flying." She turned back to the controls, her fingers dancing over the screen. "And I'll do whatever it takes to make sure we both get out of this alive." The ship began to shudder violently, the Zaran Guild's weapons slamming into their shields. Caden could see the incoming fire on the display, a streak of deadly plasma heading their way. He had no idea what he was doing, but his instincts kicked in. He reached for the weapons console. "We've got weapons?" he asked, barely keeping his voice steady. Zyra flashed him a quick look, her eyes gleaming. "We've got plenty." Caden flipped the switches. A row of hidden cannons slid out from the side of the ship, gleaming with an almost predatory energy. His hand hesitated for only a second before he slammed the button. "Here goes nothing." The ship roared to life. Plasma fire erupted from the guns, streaking across space, slamming into the Zaran Guild's ship, knocking it off course. But they weren't done yet. More were coming. Caden's heart raced as he watched the ship twist and turn, narrowly avoiding enemy fire. But then, the Zaran Guild fired again. Missiles. They locked onto the ship's coordinates. Target acquired. Not good. Caden cursed, gripping the armrests tighter. "You think?" Zyra shot back, a grin flashing across her face. "I'm not done yet." She hit the thrusters again, sending the ship into a deadly spin, avoiding another round of missiles by inches. They were on the run. And now, they were fighting back. The ship's shaking had stopped, but the tension in the cockpit was still thick, almost suffocating. Caden could hear the steady hum of the engines, a constant reminder of their fragile existence. The Zaran Guild wasn't backing down. They had just launched a full-scale assault, and Zyra's evasive maneuvers weren't going to keep them alive forever. Caden wiped a bead of sweat from his forehead, his hands still gripping the control panel. The ship was on fire, figuratively and literally. He wasn't sure how much longer they could keep this up. "What now?" he asked, his voice edged with urgency. Zyra didn't look at him. She was calm, too calm for the situation they were in. Her fingers moved swiftly over the console, navigating through a series of options that Caden couldn't understand. "We fight back," she said, almost matter-of-factly. "We'll outrun them for a while, but eventually, we'll have to face them. This isn't just about the bounty anymore." Her eyes flicked to him briefly, sharp. "This is about survival." Caden clenched his jaw. He wasn't sure if he was ready for what came next. But he didn't have a choice. The sound of plasma fire rang out from behind them, followed by the screeching of the ship's alarms. They were being tracked and the Zaran guild was closing in fast. "We're not going to make it out of this," Caden muttered under his breath. Zyra's gaze flickered toward him, and for a split second, he saw something in her eyes, a brief flash of doubt. It was gone in an instant, replaced by that same cold determination. "We will," she replied, her voice firm. "But we need to make sure they don't have a chance to track us down again." Before Caden could ask what she meant, the ship lurched, jerking to one side. The controls beneath his hands hummed, vibrating with the intensity of the ship's sudden acceleration. They were jumping to light speed. Zyra was pushing the engines to their limit faster than he thought possible. The stars outside stretched into glowing streaks of light, and the familiar backdrop of space disappeared in an instant. They were in hyperspace. "What the hell did you do?" Caden shouted, his hands gripping the seat as he was thrown back against it. Zyra's expression didn't waver as the ship settled into the hum of hyperspace. "We're safe for now. They can't track us while we're in motion." She turned to face him, her gaze unwavering. "But we're not safe for long." The silence between them grew heavy. Caden felt his heart still pounding in his chest, the adrenaline from the fight still rushing through him. His body was tense, his mind racing to catch up with the situation. He couldn't quite wrap his head around it. Zyra, this alien woman with strange powers and a dangerous past, was the only person he had to rely on. And somehow, that made him feel both safe and terrified at the same time. "What happens now?" he asked again, quieter this time, his voice betraying a hint of the fear that had been creeping up on him. Zyra met his gaze without hesitation. "We keep running." She said it like it was the simplest thing in the world, like she had done this 100 times before. "And when the time comes, we fight back." Her words hung in the air for a moment, and then, for the first time, her lips curved into a faint smile. "You don't really know what you've signed up for, do you?" she asked, her tone lighter than before, almost teasing. Caden frowned. "No, I didn't." His eyes searched hers, feeling the weight of her words. He didn't know what this was. He didn't know her. "You're in deeper than you think," she said softly, her smile fading as she returned to the console. "But you're here now. And there's no going back." For a moment, there was only the low hum of the ship, the sound of their breaths filling the space. Caden couldn't help but wonder if that was a warning, or if it was something more. "What happens when they catch up to us?" Caden asked. Zyra didn't hesitate. "We make sure they don't." Her words were simple, but the intensity behind them left no room for argument. Caden realized then, that Zyra wasn't just a fighter. She was a survivor. And if he was going to make it out of this, he would have to become one too. The ship shuddered again, but this time, it wasn't from enemy fire. It was from the hyperspace jump, pulling them deeper into unknown territory. They were heading toward the outer rim, a place far beyond the reach of the Zaran Guild, but also a place filled with dangers that were just as deadly. As the ship settled into the quiet of deep space, Caden couldn't shake the feeling that he had just made the worst decision of his life. But there was no turning back now. He glanced at Zyra once more. She was looking at the stars outside, her posture relaxed but alert, as if she was waiting for the next battle. He didn't know what was coming next, but he did know one thing: he wasn't alone anymore. Caden sat in the cockpit, staring out at the swirling void of space. The stars had become little more than streaks of light, the vastness of the galaxy stretching endlessly before them. But despite the beauty of it all, a heavy weight pressed down on his chest. They were safe at least for the moment, but it didn't feel like victory. "How long until we're safe?" Caden asked, his voice barely above a whisper. He didn't want to ask, didn't want to seem weak, but the question had been gnawing at him ever since they jumped to hyperspace. Zyra didn't answer immediately. She was focused, her eyes darting between the various readouts flashing on the control panel in front of her. Her fingers moved with practiced precision, yet there was a noticeable tension in her movements. She wasn't as calm as she appeared. "We're not safe," she said after a long pause, her voice low, almost distant. "Not until we destroy the weapon, or at least hide it." "What's so special about this weapon?" Caden pressed, trying to get to the heart of the matter. He needed to understand. He couldn't keep running blind. Zyra finally turned her gaze to him, her violet eyes gleaming. For the first time, Caden saw something deeper in them. A shadow. Regret. Fear. "I didn't mean for any of this to happen." Her voice cracked slightly, but she quickly composed herself. "I was part of the crew who stole it. We thought we were doing the right thing, but we didn't know what it was. We thought it was just a weapon. A tool. Something to sell to the highest bidder." Caden's frown deepened. "So, what is it? What does it do?" Zyra hesitated, her fingers still moving over the controls. She looked away, as though trying to find the right words. Finally, she let out a slow breath and met his gaze again. "It's not just a weapon," she said softly. "It's an entire military program, something the Imperium has been working on in secret for years. It's not just a gun, or a bomb. It's a bioweapon, something that can control entire populations, alter their biology, make them obedient." Caden blinked, his mind struggling to process what she was saying. "You mean, like mind control?" Zyra nodded, her eyes darkening. "Worse. It can rewrite the very DNA of a species. Create an army of compliant soldiers. They can force people to become part of their regime. And they'll stop at nothing to get it back." Caden felt the weight of her words sink in. His stomach churned. He had bought this ship on a whim. What started as a simple auction had turned into a nightmare. Now he was stuck in the middle of a galactic conflict, with a dangerous weapon on board and no way out. "You said we," Caden said, his voice quiet but firm. "Who else was involved in stealing it? Who else knows about it?" Zyra's face hardened. "The rest of the Black Star Legion, the ones who survived. They were the ones who realized the truth about what we had taken. But they were too late to stop it. And now, they're dead. Most of them, anyway. The Imperium came for them. One by one." Caden's heart pounded in his chest. "You said you were hiding." He leaned forward, his eyes searching hers. "From who?" "From the Imperium." Zyra nodded slowly. "Yes. And from everyone else. The Black Star Legion was wiped out, but there are still people out there who want the weapon. And they won't stop until they find it." Her voice dropped lower, almost a whisper. "Including the Zaran Guild. They were hired by someone with enough credits to buy the weapon and more." Caden's stomach sank. They weren't just being hunted by random bounty hunters. This was bigger. Much bigger. There was a shadowy figure pulling the strings, orchestrating this entire mess. "What now?" Caden asked, his voice tight with fear and frustration. Zyra took a deep breath, her eyes flickering toward the dark void outside the ship. We need to find the weapon before they do. And then we destroy it? Once and for all. Caden glanced at her, unsure whether to believe her. He wanted to. He needed to. But something about this whole situation felt wrong. She had her secrets, and Caden wasn't sure if he knew the full story yet. But what other choice did he have? So, we destroy the weapon. How? Caden asked. Zyra turned away from the controls, her face serious. We go to the only place it can be destroyed. Where? Caden pressed. The edge of the galaxy, she replied, her voice growing softer. A place no one dares to go. Where the Imperium lost control. The ship began to shift slightly again, the faintest vibrations running through the metal. The engines hummed steadily, as if answering Zyra's command. They were headed deeper into unknown space, now far from everything they knew. The silence between them felt heavy. Caden felt the weight of the journey ahead. There would be no turning back. The deeper they went into the unknown, the more dangerous it would become. He glanced at Zyra. She was hiding something. But maybe, just maybe, she was telling the truth. As they sailed farther into the unknown, one thought gnawed at Caden: was he really ready for what lay ahead? The ship sped through the depths of uncharted space, the stars streaking by in glowing arcs. The hum of the engines was almost soothing, but it did little to ease the tension in Caden's chest. Every moment that passed felt like a countdown to disaster. He couldn't shake the feeling that the Zaran Guild wasn't the only threat lurking in the dark. Zyra sat at the helm, her posture stiff but controlled. She glanced at the console, then back at Caden. Her eyes narrowed slightly, calculating, as if she were measuring something in him. "We're getting close," she said, her voice steady. "Once we reach the edge of the galaxy, there's no turning back. There's no guarantee we'll survive." Caden swallowed hard. "I don't need guarantees. I just need a way out of this." He couldn't believe how deep into this nightmare he had gotten, how quickly everything had spiraled out of control. A part of him still wanted to walk away. Leave the ship, leave Zyra, and escape before it was too late. But he couldn't. Not anymore. Zyra's eyes flickered toward him, a flash of something understanding? Maybe even sympathy. But it was gone as quickly as it appeared. "The weapon," Caden said, his voice quieter now, almost a whisper. "Is it really worth it? Is it worth all this?" Zyra didn't answer immediately. Instead, she stared at the star-filled void outside, her expression unreadable. "Yes," she finally said. "It's worth everything. The galaxy can't have something like that falling into the wrong hands. If the Imperium gets their hands on it, they'll rewrite everything. They'll control us all. We're doing the right thing. Trust me." Caden leaned back in his seat, the weight of her words settling heavily in his mind. He didn't know if he could trust her completely. But what choice did he have? She was right about one thing: if they didn't stop the weapon, there would be no future. No freedom. As if on cue, a sharp beep sounded from the console. Caden looked over at Zyra, who was already reaching for the controls. "We've got company," she muttered. Caden's eyes widened. "Are you sure?" Zyra didn't answer. She had already activated the shields, her fingers dancing over the holographic console. The ship shuddered again as they entered a dangerous asteroid field, the rocks tumbling in space, ready to tear apart anything in their path. "Hold on," she shouted, as the ship lurched sideways, narrowly avoiding a massive asteroid. "We can't afford to slow down." Not now. Caden braced himself, feeling the heat of adrenaline course through his veins. The ship's systems were beeping urgently, the threat of incoming fire clear on the display. A Zaran Guild ship appeared on the scanner, faster, sleeker, and much more heavily armed. We need to lose them. Now. Zyra's voice was fierce, but there was a determination in her eyes that Caden couldn't ignore. She was ready for this. But was he? The asteroid field was their only hope. It was a deadly gamble. If they made one wrong move, they'd be reduced to nothing more than floating debris. But Zyra wasn't hesitating. She pulled the ship into a sharp dive, the engines roaring in protest as they plummeted toward the field below. The Zaran Guild's ship followed, its weapons already charging up. "Do you trust me?" Zyra asked, her eyes fixed on the path ahead. Caden didn't hesitate. Yes. He had no choice. The ship's hull rattled as they zipped through the asteroids, dodging rocks that seemed to come from every direction. Caden's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. He couldn't even think straight. The only thing he could do was hang on and hope Zyra knew what she was doing. A missile whizzed past them, narrowly missing the ship. Zyra cursed under her breath, steering them even harder to the left. They were too close to the rocks now. The ship had no room to maneuver. Then, out of nowhere, a massive asteroid appeared in front of them. It was too big to avoid. Zyra made a split-second decision. With no time to calculate, she slammed the ship into the asteroid, using it as a shield. The collision was violent, sending them spinning, but they managed to knock the pursuing ship off course. The Zaran Guild ship wasn't so lucky. It clipped the asteroid, sending it spiraling out of control, debris flying in every direction. Caden watched in awe as the enemy ship exploded into a ball of fire, disintegrating into space dust. "Did we do it?" Caden asked, breathless, his eyes wide in disbelief. Zyra exhaled slowly, her fingers still gripping the controls. "For now," she said, her voice laced with satisfaction. "But we're not done yet." They had escaped. For the moment. The ship drifted into the empty void, the wreckage of the Zaran Guild ship scattered behind them. The silence in the cockpit was almost deafening after the chaos of the chase. Caden sat back in his seat, his heart still racing. Zyra was silent for a moment, then she turned to him. "You did good," she said, her voice softer now. "We're still alive because of you." Caden blinked, surprised. "I didn't do anything." "You did everything." Zyra gave him a small, almost unreadable smile. "You didn't run. That's something. Most people would have by now." Caden wasn't sure what to make of her words. There was something about her, something more than just her strength or her beauty. She wasn't just an alien, she was a survivor. And for the first time, Caden wondered if maybe, just maybe, he was starting to understand her. The ship drifted silently through the vast emptiness of space, the wreckage of the Zaran Guild ship slowly fading from view. Caden leaned back in his seat, his breath finally slowing, but the adrenaline was still coursing through his veins. The near-death experience had left him rattled, and it wasn't just the chase that was haunting him. It was everything. Zyra's calm exterior was unnerving. She wasn't rattled. Not by the Zaran Guild. Not by the weapon they were carrying. She was always in control. But Caden couldn't shake the feeling that she was keeping something from him. He had seen it in her eyes, the flash of fear, the hesitation when they were being chased. She wasn't as invincible as she wanted him to believe. "How much further?" Caden asked, breaking the silence. Zyra was focused on the console, her fingers moving swiftly as she checked the ship's coordinates. "We're almost there," she replied without looking at him. "Once we reach the outer rim, the weapon will be destroyed." "But why not just destroy it now?" Caden asked, his frustration starting to build. He had been asking himself this question ever since he found out what they were carrying. Why keep running? Why wait? Zyra's gaze flickered to him, her eyes sharp. "You don't understand." "Then explain it to me," Caden pressed, his voice tense. "I've been trusting you this whole time, but I need to know what's going on." For a moment, there was silence. Zyra didn't speak, but Caden could feel the weight of her gaze on him. Finally, she sighed, her shoulders slumping slightly as if the burden was too much for her to carry alone. "The weapon, it's not just a weapon," she said quietly. "It's a key. It unlocks something much bigger than what you're thinking." Caden furrowed his brow. "A key to what?" Zyra turned away from him, staring out at the stars outside. "It's not just a weapon that destroys, Caden. It can create. It can change life as we know it. The Imperium doesn't just want to use it for control, they want to transform the galaxy. They want to rewrite reality itself." Caden felt a chill run down his spine. "Rewrite reality?" Zyra nodded, her voice tinged with something darker. "Yes. This weapon has the power to rewrite the genetic code of entire populations. It could destroy worlds, or create new ones. But if it falls into the wrong hands, it would be the end of everything. A galaxy reshaped by one empire, one ruler." Caden felt a knot tighten in his chest. He had known the weapon was powerful, but this was beyond anything he had imagined. He had no idea what they were really up against. "So that's why we're running," Caden muttered, more to himself than to her. "You're trying to destroy it before the Imperium gets their hands on it." Zyra's lips curled into something that wasn't quite a smile. "Exactly." She turned back to him, her eyes fierce. "But it's not just the Imperium anymore. There are other forces after it. The Black Star Legion had their reasons, but there are still people who want to use the weapon for themselves. The Zaran Guild is just the start." Caden nodded slowly, his mind reeling. He didn't know who to trust anymore, but he did know one thing: they couldn't keep running forever. Suddenly, the ship lurched again, pulling Caden out of his thoughts. A loud alarm blared, the red lights flashing across the cockpit. "We've got incoming," Zyra said sharply, her voice now calm and focused. Caden's eyes darted to the display. Another ship, this one bigger, more heavily armed, had appeared on their radar. "Zaran Guild again?" he asked. Zyra shook her head. "No. Worse." Before Caden could ask anything else, the ship was shaking violently, the force of the enemy vessels' weapons pounding against their shields. The display showed an unfamiliar logo, a black crescent moon wrapped around a star. "Who the hell are they?" Caden demanded, his hands gripping the console. "Not good," Zyra muttered, her voice tight with tension. "They're the Shattered Dawn, a mercenary group that works for whoever pays the most. They've been after the weapon for years, but they've kept their distance. Looks like they've finally found us. We need to fight back." Zyra didn't need to be told twice. She slammed her fist down on the control panel, flipping switches that activated the ship's hidden weapons systems. The ship hummed with newfound power as energy coursed through its weapons array. "Time to make our move." Caden braced himself as the ship surged forward, dodging another round of plasma fire. The Shattered Dawn's ship was relentless, its weapons slamming into the Eclipse's hull. The shields were failing. They didn't have much time. "Get ready!" Zyra yelled over the chaos, her voice filled with focus. She threw the ship into a hard roll, narrowly dodging a series of missiles that streaked past them. "We've got one chance." Caden's heart was racing, his hands sweating as he gripped the weapons console. He had never been in a fight like this before, but there was no room for hesitation. He hit the button. The ship's weapons exploded with energy, ion blasts cutting through the blackness of space, slamming into the shattered Dawn's ship. The mercenaries weren't prepared for the sheer force of the strike. Their shields faltered, and in a brilliant flash of light, their ship was sent spiraling out of control, debris scattering in every direction. "We did it!" Caden's voice was breathless, a mix of relief and disbelief. Zyra didn't smile. She was already turning her attention to the next threat. "This isn't over yet," she said, her voice low and serious. "We're heading into dangerous territory now. The next battle will be harder. We have to keep moving." The ship cruised away from the wreckage, deeper into the void. The hum of the engines filled the cockpit, but this time, Caden couldn't shake the feeling that they were being pulled towards something. Something that could change everything. He glanced at Zyra, who was staring at the stars outside. "We're not done yet, are we?" Her eyes met his. "No. But we're still alive. And that's enough for now." After the battle with the shattered Dawn, the ship drifted into the calm of space, a few stars flashing in the distance like distant beacons. The engines hummed steadily, but the tension in the air hadn't quite dissipated. The adrenaline from the fight still buzzed in the back of Caden's mind, his pulse still a little too fast. But now, for the first time, it was quiet. They were safe, for now. Caden leaned against the control panel, glancing at Zyra, who was sitting across the room, her posture relaxed, but her eyes distant. She had always seemed like she could handle everything, her cold exterior never giving way to fear or doubt. But now, for the first time, he saw something else in her. Something that felt vulnerable. He took a deep breath and walked over to her. "You okay?" he asked, his voice softer than he intended. Zyra didn't look at him right away. Instead, she gazed out at the endless black of space. "I'm fine," she said, her tone neutral, but there was an edge to her voice. She was holding something back. Caden could feel it. He stepped closer, just a little closer than usual. The silence between them felt heavy, filled with unspoken words. "You don't have to keep it all in, you know," Caden said, his voice barely above a whisper. "We're in this together." Her eyes flickered to him for a moment, and in that moment, Caden felt something stir inside him. He didn't know if it was her strength, her resilience, or something deeper, something he couldn't quite put into words. But the tension in her shoulders didn't ease, not yet. She was still hiding something. Zyra sighed, leaning back against the console, her arms folded across her chest. She let out a soft chuckle, but it wasn't a happy one. "You think this is easy? You think I'm just some cold machine that can handle all of this?" Her voice was tinged with bitterness now, something raw breaking through her usual composure. "You don't know me, Caden." Caden stood still, watching her. He felt his chest tighten. What did she mean by that? Cold machine? He took another step forward, a little hesitant, but something inside him told him to do it. He didn't understand why, he just felt the need to be closer to her, to somehow reach through the walls she had built around herself. "Then tell me," he said quietly. "Tell me what you're really feeling. What's really going on inside your head?" Zyra looked at him, her expression unreadable. The tension between them grew, thick and heavy, but there was something more in her eyes now. Something unguarded. "I don't want you to think I'm weak." Her voice was barely above a whisper. "I can't let you see that. I can't let anyone see it." Caden's heart pounded. He didn't know what to say, but he didn't need to. He could feel the weight of her words, the unspoken fear, the vulnerability that she was so carefully hiding. It hit him harder than anything they had been through so far. This wasn't just about the weapon anymore. This was about Zyra, the real woman behind the warrior facade. He stepped even closer. "I don't think you're weak." His voice was steady, but there was a softness in it that felt unfamiliar. He wasn't used to being this open, this honest. Zyra's eyes softened, just for a moment. She didn't speak, but the wall between them seemed to crack, just slightly. Caden could see the shift in her. She was starting to trust him, little by little. Maybe more than she had intended. Then, before either of them could say anything else, the ship jolted again. It was a sudden movement, throwing them off balance. Caden reached out instinctively, his hand brushing against hers. It was a simple touch, just the brush of his fingers against hers, but the effect was immediate. Zyra froze, her breath catching slightly. She didn't pull away, but her muscles tensed. The warmth of his hand against hers seemed to fill the small space between them, filling it with something new, something they hadn't addressed, but that was always there, lingering. Caden didn't pull his hand away. Neither did she. Their eyes met, and for a moment, it felt like the entire galaxy had stopped moving. There was no Zaran guild. No weapon. No enemies. Just the two of them, standing there, silently understanding something that had been building between them for days. Zyra's voice broke the stillness, quieter than ever. "You don't know how dangerous it is to get too close, Caden." Caden didn't answer at first. He wasn't sure what to say. But somehow, he knew this was the moment. "I'm not afraid of you, Zyra," he said softly. "I'm not afraid of what we're becoming." For a brief second, Zyra's expression softened, almost imperceptibly, as if she was allowing herself to believe his words. Then, she lowered her eyes, breaking the connection, but her hand lingered near his for just a moment longer. They didn't speak again, but the silence between them felt different this time. It wasn't the uncomfortable, tense silence that had marked their interactions before. This was something else, something unspoken, but deep and real. As the ship continued its journey, the stars outside slowly shifted, their distant light a silent witness to the bond that was quietly forming between them. Caden didn't know what the future held, but as he glanced at Zyra, he realized one thing: this wasn't just about survival anymore. This was about something deeper, something that neither of them had expected. The ship hummed steadily through the dark, but the quiet was a lie. Caden could feel it in his chest, something big was coming. They were heading straight for the edge of the galaxy, to the place where Zyra believed the weapon could be destroyed, but the Imperium's ships were closing in fast. Zyra was silent as she worked the controls, her fingers flying over the holographic console. The flickering lights reflected in her eyes, and for the first time, Caden saw the weight of everything she had been carrying. This wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't just about destroying the weapon. This was personal. "Zyra," he said, walking up beside her, his voice quieter than usual. We're almost there. But I need you to tell me one thing. What's the real reason you're fighting for this? Her fingers paused, hovering over the console. It's not just the weapon, she said, her voice tight. It's what the Imperium will do if they get it. They'll rewrite the galaxy. We won't have a future. No one will. Caden's heart raced as he processed her words. The stakes had never been higher. He could feel the tension in his body, the fight or flight instinct urging him to be ready. But more than that, he could feel the tension between him and Zyra, the unspoken connection that had only deepened in the face of everything they had survived. We do this together, he said, his voice firm but gentle. Zyra's eyes flicked to him, the faintest flicker of something unguarded crossing her features. I know. She didn't say anything more, but the look in her eyes said everything. They were in this together. No turning back. Suddenly, the ship jolted as the first wave of enemy fire slammed into their shields. Caden was thrown back into his seat, the impact vibrating through the hull. The alarms blared, and the ship's systems flashed red. They've found us. Zyra's hands were steady as she worked the controls, pushing the ship into evasive maneuvers. I'm not running anymore, she muttered, more to herself than to him. This ends now. The Imperium ships were on their tail, firing relentlessly. Caden gripped the weapons console, activating the hidden cannons. The ship rocked as another blast hit them, but this time, Zyra was ready. She turned the ship in a sharp roll, avoiding the enemy's plasma fire. Caden, now! Zyra shouted, and without hesitation, he fired. The ship's cannons erupted in a blinding burst of energy, slamming into one of the Imperium ships. The enemy ship faltered, its shields failing as explosions ripped through its hull. They had made a dent, but the fight was far from over. Caden's heart pounded as they continued their high-speed evasive maneuvers. Every move was calculated, each one a dance between life and death. They were nearly there, just a little farther to the edge of the galaxy, to the place where Zyra believed the weapon could be destroyed. But the Imperium wasn't going to make it easy. Another blast hit, this time a direct hit on their aft shields. The ship groaned under the pressure. We can't take another hit like that, Caden warned. We don't have a choice, Zyra said, determination in her voice. She punched the thrusters, propelling the ship forward at full speed. Hold on. They were nearly there. The final push. Caden could feel the weight of the moment. The weapon was within reach, but so were their enemies. With one last burst of speed, they made it to the edge of the galaxy. The edge of everything they knew. Zyra turned to Caden, her eyes locked on his. This is it, she said quietly. We destroy it now, or we'll never get another chance. Caden nodded, the weight of their decision settling over him. He didn't need to think twice. This was the moment they had been fighting for. And it wasn't just about the weapon anymore. With a final, powerful strike, the weapon was destroyed. The ship's systems went into overdrive as the shock wave from the explosion ripped through space. For a moment, everything went dark. The battle was over. The ship was silent now, its thrusters humming softly as they drifted through the vast emptiness of space. The once aggressive alarms had faded into the background, and the ship's systems were now working in harmony. But for Caden, the silence was almost deafening. It wasn't that the fight had been easy, it was just that the aftermath, the stillness, made everything feel so final. We did it, Caden whispered, more to himself than anyone else. His fingers hovered over the control panel, still feeling the thrum of energy from the final blast that had destroyed the Imperium ships and the weapon they had fought so hard to protect. Zyra sat quietly at the helm, her eyes fixed on the stars outside, lost in thought. Her hands, which had once been moving swiftly and decisively, now rested at her sides. She looked exhausted. For the first time since Caden met her, there was no edge to her. No cold, no walls. She was just a person, and the weight of everything she had carried was visible in the slump of her shoulders. "Zyra," Caden started, his voice soft. "We've made it. The fight's over." He wasn't sure what else to say. There had been so much to fight for, so much pain and loss, and now, here they were, standing on the edge of the galaxy, both of them forever changed. Zyra's eyes didn't leave the viewport. "I never thought we'd make it here," she murmured. "I thought I would die before I ever got close." Her voice was distant, and for a moment, Caden wondered if she was speaking more to herself than to him. He took a few steps forward, standing beside her. "And now?" he asked. Zyra's lips curved into a small, faint smile, but it didn't quite reach her eyes. "Now, I guess we have to figure out what comes next." The tension between them had shifted. It wasn't just about survival anymore. It wasn't about who would be left standing after the battle. It was about what they would do with their lives now that they had won. Caden could feel the uncertainty swirling in the air, but he also knew that the connection between him and Zyra had deepened in a way that couldn't be undone. They had fought side by side, faced death together, and come out on the other side. That bond was unbreakable. "What now?" Caden asked, his voice filled with a mix of curiosity and concern. The fight was over, but they still had so much to figure out. There was no longer any threat of the weapon falling into the wrong hands, but the future was still uncertain. Zyra let out a breath, her expression softening as she turned to face him. "Now, we live." Her words were simple, but Caden felt the weight of them. There was a finality in her tone, an acceptance of what had happened. "I don't know what that looks like yet," she continued, "but maybe we can find out together." Caden studied her, feeling a warmth spreading through him. For the first time, there was no mission, no battle. Just the two of them, standing here, together. The silence stretched between them, comfortable, but still charged with so much emotion that neither of them spoke for a long time. Then, Caden stepped forward, closing the small gap between them. The space between them felt different now, more personal. He reached out, gently placing his hand on her shoulder, the touch light but full of meaning. "I didn't think we'd make it either," he said softly. "But here we are." His hand lingered on her shoulder for a moment longer before slowly sliding down her arm, finding her hand. He didn't let go. "I'm not leaving, Zyra. Not now. Not ever." Zyra turned her head to meet his gaze, her eyes full of something deeper than he had ever seen before. "Caden," she seemed to search for the words, but they weren't needed. Not anymore. In a quiet, unspoken moment, she closed the distance between them, her hand squeezing his. "Thank you." The words were simple, but they carried so much weight. And this time, there was no hesitation. No walls. She wasn't just thanking him for what they had done together, she was thanking him for standing by her, for seeing her as more than just the warrior she had been. For a long moment, they stood there, hands intertwined, the vast emptiness of space stretching out before them. The galaxy was full of unknowns, but in this moment, it didn't matter. They had survived, together. They had won. What happens now? Caden asked again, this time his voice quiet but sure. Zyra's eyes sparkled as she looked at him, a genuine smile finally crossing her lips. We figure it out. Together. Suddenly, the ship's systems beeped, a soft alert indicating they were about to enter a new star system. The journey was far from over, but at least now, they knew they weren't alone. Caden turned back to the controls, his fingers still lingering on hers for a second longer before he moved to the pilot's seat. Zyra followed his lead, sitting beside him. They were no longer just survivors. They were partners in the truest sense of the word. The ship glided forward, its course set for the unknown. And for the first time, Caden wasn't afraid. He wasn't afraid of the future, of the battles ahead. Because now, he had her by his side. And that, he realized, was all he really needed. As the battle ended and the weapon was destroyed, we were left with the endless void of space, and the one question that refused to leave me, is love meant to be contained by the stars, or do we have the power to bend the universe itself? We thought we were done. We thought the fight was over. But sometimes, even when you win, you lose something along the way. In that final moment, as everything around us exploded in a burst of light, I realized something. The universe isn't just full of galaxies. It's full of possibilities. And as the stars blinked out of view, I understood something deeper. Love doesn't come with boundaries. But then, I asked myself one final question: what happens now? Does this love go beyond the battles, beyond the struggles, or does it simply end? Is this the end of our story, or just the beginning of a much greater journey? And if you think you know how it ends, let me ask you this: can love really transcend everything? Could we truly face the unknown together, side by side? Or will the universe continue to pull us apart? The truth? We might never have the answers. But we've already started looking for them. And this is only the beginning. So what about you, fellow traveler? Do you believe love can break through the limits of space, time, and all the galaxies between us? Because we're just getting started. If you want to uncover the rest of the story, if you want to find out what happens next, then subscribe. You're one of the first 1,000 explorers to join us, and you won't want to miss what's coming. Let's find out where this journey takes us together.